Let's see here. Come on, doll face. There you go.
Expensive taste is
13? Yes. Okay. Okay, I can do that. Oh, oh no. Oh. Well, they had a legendary. Remember, I can change that. Okay, so we. Oh my gosh. So pretty. is pretty. Okay, I want to change this. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm.
It's like the table.
Ew. I can get off TikTok. Okay. Oh, I
Here's your cat's nail. When you were trimming.
I feel like I've spoken to you a million times from my vortex, and it's just good to be sitting here. And for the most part, my life is going absolutely amazing. I'm actually beginning to enjoy contrast, and that's a good thing. But what I want to ask you about is This thing I do that I'm really brilliant at is procrastination. And I do it so well. And there seems to be, if I focus on something and I do what you say, focus on why I want something and I get into alignment with the feeling, when I'm done doing that and all the exercises, I'm really not in the mood to take anymore. So I'm going to give you a really strong statement, and we want you to remember this always. Procrastination is a byproduct of being out of the vortex. Okay. Procrastination is the way you feel when you're trying to fill in your own grid. And you just can't buck the curve. Procrastination is the opposite feeling of inspiration. And so when you feel procrastination, procrastinate. Don't try to push through it. Don't try to push through it because you can't buck that current anyway. Go do something fun. Really? Oh, people are having a hard time with that. What is your option? In other words, think about what it means. So if you have been putting things in the vortex and you have, and now you prepaid before you went to sleep last night, you've been segment intending, you've gone out to do some meditation and a rampage of appreciation, and you've focused on some positive aspects, and you're all tuned in. And now the subtleties
Oh my god. Oh my god.
and if you do that on a really consistent basis, even as soon as the first day that you do that, you'll get
Oh.
feelings about doing things. But what you're saying is, oh, I get all kinds of inspiration to do things, but I don't get inspiration to do the things I don't want to do. And we say, that's because the things you don't want to do are outside the vortex, and you're asking for something that's not why you want what you want. The best example that we have of something like that was Jerry harassing Esther about not booking airline tickets some years ago. She just couldn't make herself do it. She could not make herself do it because in her mind it was always a grind. They were going to take longer than she thought was humanly reasonable, and they were not going to offer to her the seats that she really wanted. In other words, from her point of view, not usually a pleasant process. And so every day Jerry would say, they'll cost more the longer you wait. And every day Esther would say, I know, it's on my list. And every day he'd say, it was on your list yesterday, and the day before yesterday, and the day before that. And Esther would say, I know, but she could not make herself do it. And then one night, she put herself in the bed, and suddenly she had the impulse to go make those phone calls. It was an overwhelming feeling. She got up, placed her call to the airline that she holds the forever miles with, and a very bright, happy-sounding person answered the phone, and Esther said, I have 10 destinations that I want to book for. Do you have time? And she said, I'm all yours. And off they went. And every single destination, the girl said, I can't believe this. 5 minutes ago, those seats weren't there. I can't believe this. 5 minutes ago, those seats weren't there. I can't believe this. 5 minutes ago, those seats weren't there. And Esther booked 10 destinations with ease, and as they flew the flights, every flight flew. There were no canceled flights. There were no delayed flights. In other words, we weren't using the terminology in those days of the grid filling in, but procrastination is simply you trying to take action before energies are aligned. That's what the feeling is. You're trying to move something forward with action instead of moving it forward with the momentum of alignment. That's what it always means. And we promise you that once you start playing with this in the way that we've been talking about it here, the momentum will carry you, and you'll find yourself not needing to put things on your list to make yourself do that. You know those lists, things that I want to do, things that I need to do, things that I have to do, or my husband will kill me if I don't. All those lists, you'll just have one list, and it's the vortex. And you won't even feel like you need to make lists of it because the list will present itself to you in perfect timing and in perfect order and in perfect harmony with the other cooperative components of your universe.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is it's okay for me to just sit there and wait to feel inspired action.
What you're hearing is you have no choice.
Okay.
You can take the action and you can make yourself do it, but the results won't be pleasing, and that's why you feel like procrastinating. You've been playing this game a long time. It's not fun. You can make yourself do it, but all you do is carve out a mediocre life by making yourself do stuff you don't want to do. What you want to do is
find the reason that you want to do it or don't do it. Okay. Those are harsh words, and employers all over your nation are going to be sad when you don't show up for work on Tuesday.
Yeah, they're not happy with you.
I didn't feel like coming, and so I didn't go. And that's not, but there's more to our message. Get feeling like going, and then go. Discover the true power of your employment, the true power of your occupation, the true power of your clarity, the true power of the universe. Enlist the cooperation of the universe by doing the energy work first. Don't ask action to carry it. There's not enough action in the world to buck your current.
Through your teachings, I have moved myself into a very different place vibrationally, and I spend a lot of time alone now, which really helps. I have 3 kids and I work, and it's so much easier to hold my vibration steady when I'm alone, so I do a lot of work alone. With my dogs, I walk in the woods, and oftentimes I walk every day. When I'm walking, the universe surprises and delights me because I'm so open. I feel this just, sometimes it's like, you had described this one time with Esther. I'll look up at the sky and it's just so blue, you know, or the frog that just appears in front of me, or the owl, and sometimes the wind. And my mother passed, or whatever you want to call it, croaked. My mother's with me, and I just want to kind of, I don't know, just find the words with you about this because I want to understand it. I feel like I've been excited when, like, I had a friend croak recently, and I was excited that I was going to have her in this other relationship. And sometimes a lot of times I can hear, I get like downloads of either a thought, or I can almost hear my mother's voice, feel her smile. And sometimes I hear you as well. I'll be walking and I start to pose a question, and then it's as if your voice is there. And sometimes your voice sounds like her voice, which is really interesting. And then I just know from early on in my life, I've always been fascinated with non-physical.
Maybelline New York. New Lash Sensational Body Mascara. Sensational full body lashes with buildable volume and lift. Breakthrough body curve brush with volumizing tech.
I love cemeteries. I love thinking about where are they now, and that whole other realm, the idea of having a cadre of non-physical with me. I have felt them even before I knew your work. I have felt these moments of somebody's lighting up a path for me, and I say, I got it.
It isn't so much that someone is lighting up the path for you as that you are in alignment with the lighted path, and so are they. So it's like discovering it together, which is more delicious. And that's the way we want you to hear it. Because humans have been looking for someone to light their way, or someone to lead their way, or someone to fix things that are broken. And because it's contrary to the laws of the universe and the natural expansion, you can't go far with that approach. But when you get it, that when someone reemerges into non-physical, that they are still forward looking with you, that everyone who from your point of view has been before is still focused forward in the here and now, and always have been, but you haven't been looking for them or feeling for them until someone important and personal to you makes their transition, and then because it matters more, you focus in a more defined, refined way. In other words, the continuity of life on this planet is all about this continual cycle. And many of you have been hearing us say things for a long time, such as we are all eternal beings and there is no such thing as death, and that consciousness continues. But when you are aware of someone who has made their transition, and you are listening for them and feeling for them and discovering them, we want you to pay attention to when your awareness of them is keenest, because if you will let them show you What they will remind you, you knew it and forgot it and knew it and forgot it, but they will help you to remember in a way that will really serve you, is that you've already carved out what you want and put it into the vortex. And everything is coming into alignment in order to help you have a full and satisfying manifestation of those things. So the path is already lighted. But as you are feeling for what you now know is pure positive energy, as you're feeling for what you now know is a uplifted observation and expectation, it just helps to tune your frequency in a finer way that allows you to then receive the benefit that you would have received anyway. Esther has been receiving us for a long time, and she knows who Abraham is. She knows that she can have dialogue with us. She knows that we're on her side and that we will give her input and guidance about anything that is important to her. You too, she knows that. But Jerry making his transition gave Esther a unique question that she began asking, because is Jerry just part of a soup, or is he specific consciousness? How interested is he now, from his non-physical perspective, in the work that he was about before he made his transition? That's really the question that focused within Esther. And she was delighted to discover that his interest is keener than it has ever been before, because it is absent any resistance that was there. Now that's true of everyone, because everyone was doing work. Jerry's work feels important. This movement mattered to him, but everyone who was physically focused was doing work, and everyone is still interested in the children they birthed and the lives that they were focused upon. Everyone who has made their transition, the founders of the nation, are still interested. Esther and friends following the Philadelphia workshop went to the buildings and looked at the documents, and they managed to make their way in at the last part of the day, right before the doors were closing. They were inspired to go through a door that didn't even have a sign on it, and in they were, looking at the documents, salivating over the deliciousness of the words that were written. And Esther felt her body covered with the goosebumps and the thrills of all of those who had been involved in the writing of them, in the believing of them, in the holding of the standard to which you were all still striving for. In other words,
What's over there?
all of that consciousness of all of that work still present and available to anyone who gazes upon the words that have been fashioned, you see. The continuity of this life experience from physical to non-physical to physical to non-physical is something that when you begin focusing upon it, and when you allow yourself the specifics of knowing that someone that you have identified, some energy that you know, is not guiding you because you need guidance, reveling in the detail of your life right here and now. Oh, it doesn't get any more specific than that. In other words, you got to go general to hook into the energy. But once you've hooked into the energy, the specifics
trying
of
to
their
kill me.
interest will
How do I do
thrill
this?
you. We have enjoyed this interaction more than words can explain. And as we just said to our friend, our favorite part of this interaction is feeling you click into place with the knowledge that you were born with, but that has expanded since you got here. It's nice to know that you never get it done. That helps when you're standing in the absence of the manifestation of something that you want. But it's also nice to know that you never get it wrong, which makes it all right to stand where you are in the absence of something that you think that you want. And we think that today you've come into a new place of understanding that what you want is for the feeling of it, and you can accomplish the feeling of it as soon as today if you want to, and once you do that, then the grid must begin filling in. We would like you to see this life experience as a veritable treasure hunt, because it is that. There isn't anything
What
that
did I activate?
you are deprived of, ever. Everything that you want is queued up for your realization. But you knew coming in that you wouldn't enjoy it if it got there all at once. And you knew coming in that you wouldn't enjoy it if somebody else told you what it should be.
Ir de compras con tus padres puede ser vergonzoso.
What?
This for a while, and I say we, and my wife and I were both, we listen, we try to practice what we've learned, and what has been so amazing is how fast. And we've done a lot of work to get to where we are, and but it just over the last couple of years, in financial matters and those kinds of things, it's just wild how fast it's changed, and through this process, and we're going through even more growth here, and sometimes I'm just not sure how to live this new life. I mean, it's so much.
Don't worry, it will never get more than you can receive. In other words, if you're not up for it, it's not the next logical step. And if you are up for it, it is. So everything that's coming, embrace it and pat yourself on the back.
Well, that's on the way up here. We stopped at a couple of car dealerships, and it's been funny. We need to buy a new car for Liz, and we kept riding around looking, and we could not see anything that we liked. Every day we're driving and you're looking at cars. We said we couldn't see anything we liked, but that wasn't true. Actually, I knew exactly what I liked, but I was saying, oh well, that would be so extravagant, but I can afford it. So we actually stopped at the Jaguar dealership on the way up here, and that just blows my mind. And of course we looked at it for a while, and I said, well, I couldn't buy this unless I fell in love. And he said, you won't fall in love until you drive it. And so we did. And now we're trying to figure out which color, and that's it's just. So what has happened as this changes is I almost feel like I'm bragging to even talk about it. And I don't know how to feel about that. I called an old friend of mine, where someone I grew up with, and we always touch base every now and then. And he told me about what was going on in his life, and I started to tell him about what was going on in mine. And when I got off the telephone, I thought, I just sound like I'm just way over the top with this. And all I was really trying to do was share just how incredible our experience is.
Well, you may have got a small dose of different vibrational frequencies. And we understand your hesitation. In other words, how much of my good feelings should I share with others? And we say, as much as they can take. And you'll know that by whether he ever calls back again.
I don't have a lot of questions here today. I raised my hand to basically say if you wanted to hear what I had to say, I would raise my hand and you would call on me. All I want to say is that the more we align, the more we get. It's amazing what's coming. It's the only things that aren't working are the little things, like these little mosquitoes. And it's real weird. We just went to Ireland, and our bags didn't arrive. I don't know what I did to think of that. Like the guy was up here earlier. Why think about that? Why did that happen? Doesn't matter. But there's these little physical things. They're little things. It's like we were going to go hiking in this one area of Ireland, and the day we checked into this phenomenal spa, and it's all this beautiful stuff. And that was the day my knee decided to just quit working. So all I could do was sit in the hot tub and soak and walk around in my bathrobe and slippers for 2 days. Hey, I wanted to hike in those mountains.
Well, that is tough to take.
All I could do was look at them. I just, it's just amazing, and that's
Well, what that's all about, and the reason that we are so happy to chew with you here a little bit is because as we talk with so many of you here, most of you who come to these gatherings have an emotional set point or a practice point that is somewhere around frustration and overwhelmment all the way up into joy. In other words, that's usually your range. And so things are usually going well for you, and you dip higher in many things and lower in few things, but you're usually feeling very well. But you are teachers of those who are often having experiences that are not quite like that, like the friend that you were talking to that has so many more things that are going wrong right now than right. And so we want to begin by saying that in the same way that finding the thought of anger can be great relief from a disempowering feeling of depression, that there is relief in that feeling of anger. We want to say that there is relief also in the feeling of frustration as you leave anger behind. And then we want to say that there's also relief as you leave frustration behind. And we want to say it in a way that you can really hear it, that there is the potential for relief indefinitely. In other words, we do not know of any ending point to the amount of clarity and adventure and joy and well-being. It is an unlimited thing, you see. So what you've done is you've had things in your life that were troublesome, and you lined your energy up and you felt the relief of it, and you bring yourself into better and better and better and better and better feeling places. And now, in your own words, and they're good words, you're fine-tuning. In other words, there's always room for improvement. And these little nitpicking things, they are still things that are annoying that you would feel happier without. Esther has had a rash of computer glitches. And she said to Jerry the other day, I've discovered that I am the common denominator. Because some of them are happening with LinkSpot, which has nothing to do with our coach, and some of them are happening with my airport card, which has nothing to do with LinkSpot, and some of them have to do with my satellite dish, which has nothing to do with either one of those, and some of them have to do with operating system 10 in the sound machine, which has nothing to do with those. In other words, it's her trepidation as she's moving into new unknown places, so she doesn't feel as stable and she doesn't feel as secure. Her emotional journey is one of unknown. And so as she takes the emotional journey and instead of feeling adventure, she feels trepidation, then that emotional journey finds a way of showing her more evidence of what she's really feeling. In other words, she's got to clean up her vibration. And it's funny, those like Esther and those like you that have so many things going well, who really worked harder at it when you had more things that you needed to line up, now sometimes you think that you can just be very diligent about thinking things about my body or about my work or about the big things that really matter, but then you get sloppy when you think about your computer. And we want you to turn everything into an emotional journey. In other words, we want Esther to have computer problems and feel stable. We want her to have computer problems because that's the path that she's sort of laid out. We want her to have computer problems and feel that they are temporary. We want her to feel the light at the end of the tunnel rather than the endless loop of one thing after another. In other words, she's got to find a different vibrational stance, you see. So it is with all of you. You will never reach the place where you can say, I no longer have to tend to my vibration, because part of who you are is someone on an eternal quest for more. And the more means more stuff to consider and more stuff to align within, you see. And in time, you and Esther are both going to come to this joyous awareness that that is the fun of the journey. In other words, the fun of the journey is not walking into a perfect place. The fun of the journey is tweaking it into the perfect place. The fun of the journey is forming the idea and aligning with the idea and bringing yourself into alignment with the idea and watching the fulfillment of the idea, and then stepping into a new place with new data which launches a new idea that you're not in alignment with, that you now work to come in alignment to, that launches the new idea that you're not in alignment with, that you work to get into alignment with. In other words, this is the fun of creation. Otherwise, there is stagnation. And you cannot deal with stagnation, you see. You are an eternal being, always moving forward. So the emotional journey that we want you to begin to consider is things always work well for me, and it doesn't matter where I am, and I'm never going to get it done, and there's always more fun, and I will always have more data to chew on and more decisions to make and more things to tweak into place, and it will never slow down for me. There will always be more, and I'm up to the task, and I'm up to speed with the energy, and isn't it fun? Yes.
One of the things I was laughing about today over lunch, because we were talking about this, and I came to the realization that I actually thought if I bought that car, I wouldn't want anything.
Well,
I mean, for a moment, I was like, I needed delayed gratification for some reason so that I could work for that. Or
that's a game Jerry plays too. He doesn't want to use all the good stuff up too fast, and Esther keeps promising him that the good stuff is coming faster than he can use it. In other words, she feels confidence that the stream is bigger than his ability to let it come in. You see, but Jerry is like you. He's a saver. In other words, why not fully enjoy something rather than skim the surface and move on to something else to enjoy? And Esther's feeling is, why not just enjoy everything? But the balance that you're looking for, in other words, if you're skipping to the next new because you feel unfulfilled here, there's imbalance in that. If you are skipping to the next new because it's calling you, then there's perfect alignment there. And nobody can tell you whether you're moving too slow or whether you're moving too fast. That's an individual thing. In other words, you've got to find your own balance. And it's interesting as we watch you pairing off and then setting forth to find your individual balance. In other words, sometimes relative to things to do, Jerry will open the floodgates and say yes to everything. In other words, he will work on 5 projects at the same time joyously.
Sounds familiar.
But he doesn't want to buy 5 cars at the same time, and Esther thinks that's illogical. And we say to each his own. In other words, whatever it takes to bring you into alignment, have your own emotional journey. And here's the thing that we so much want you to hear. Now, we don't feel discord between you and your mate, but the subject of co-creating is a little trickier for most people than the subject of just individual creating. And in reality, there's very little individual creating going on. You're dovetailing and interacting with so many others. So we want to apply this subject of co-creating to this understanding of these concurrent journeys that you are running on. And we want you to consider that if you are making every effort to turn everything into an emotional journey, and you are determined to feel good as you define what the emotional journey is that you are upon. In other words, you know the emotions that you are moving from what to what, and you are diligently, in a very focused way, reaching for the improved relief, the improved relief, the improved relief. What begins to happen is you begin to discover that you could be co-creating with one other or 10 other or many others who seem to want different methods to get to the end result of feeling good. So it seems like you really want different things or are even choosing different paths. But when you tend to your emotional journey and the partner that you're working with tends to their emotional journey, the universe will cleverly give you both exactly what you want. In other words, when you tend to the emotional journey, this universe has the resources and the cleverness to orchestrate for each of you what you exactly want, even when you think they are opposites one from another. It's great fun to watch.
Thanks.
Yes, indeed.
I wanted to share a quote from one of the recent publications that I got from you all. The Quarterly Journal, and I thought it was really good. And if y'all don't have a well-being card for this, I think this would be perfect because it's really helped me. I put it on a note card, obviously. But it says, everything in its perfect time, everything is unfolding, and I'm enjoying where I am now in relationship to where I'm going. Content where I am and eager for more.
We agree. That's the perfect vibrational stance.
Part of this, too, is things that have been really helpful to me recently.
Before you go further, let's talk about that just a little bit.
Sure.
Content where I am, meaning not beating the drum of lack, but clear that more is coming, so forward looking. So identifying what I want with no resistance. That's what that's saying. And it also says, content with where I am, meaning I'm making the very best of where I am while I'm looking forward to what else is coming. In other words, can you feel the concurrent journeys that are running along here together and the emotional journey that is implied there?
Right. And visualizing too the end result of what it is you do want, keeping that in the forefront of your mind. And I know that you say don't worry about the details that are supposed to occur along that journey.
Well, we say don't worry about them, but we don't say don't anticipate them or don't speculate or don't thrill yourself with them. We never say that. In other words, don't worry means don't worry about what's not happening. Don't activate the absence of what you want. The rule of thumb is be as specific as you can be and still feel good. So if you get too specific, you start not feeling so good. And if you're not specific enough, you don't feel so good. So there again, it's that keeping track of how you feel as you think about it.
Fred Meyer always gives you more ways to save, like low prices in every...
Of reality. And so you get how this is following around? I am the creator of my reality. So I'll look out into the world at realities I don't want to create that are only realities because somebody else beat the drum of them. And because they are reality, now I'll beat the drum of them and make them my reality. And we say, that's dumb. Why do that?
What is happening?
Why not look out into the database of creation and selectively sift the realities that you want to replicate and beat those drums? Your answer is, we do it because it's reality. We do it because somebody else did it. If we were standing in your physical shoes, we would not let the reality of something be our basis for attention. We would let the feeling, vibration of it be our basis. So we would start saying to anyone who was interested in knowing what we were about, if it feels good, I give it my full attention. If it doesn't, I don't look at it at all. And you know what they'll say to you? You should face reality. And then say to them, I do it all the time. I've just become a more selective sifter of the reality that I face. Because I've begun to discover that whatever reality I'm facing, whatever reality I'm talking about, thinking about, remembering, regurgitating, whatever reality I'm making statistics of, whatever reality I'm holding for very long in my vibration becomes my own reality. And I have become particular about the realities that I replicate in my experience because I've discovered I can create reality. I can create reality. I can create reality and I can choose the reality that I'm creating. We love saying that to you. You are creators and you can create anything that you want. But there's a better way of saying it. You can and will create anything that you are giving your attention to. So you are born with this magnificent barometer, this guidance system, this emotional center that lets you know how you're doing right now. And right now is all that matters because right now is the drum you're beating. Right now is the vibration that you're emanating. Right now is setting up your now and future experiences. And so it doesn't matter what you have created before. It doesn't matter what you have thought about before. It doesn't matter where you've been before. All that matters right now is your relationship between what you now want in your wisdom with all of this experience that you've gathered and what you are thinking about in relationship to it. If you want more money now, you must stop beating the drum of absence of money. You got to stop talking about there not being enough. You've got to stop beating the drum of not enough. And you say, well, how can I not notice? And we say, well, of course you're going to notice. Just don't make a federal case out of it. Just don't focus upon it incessantly. Stop talking about it. Stop using your not enough money as the basis of explaining to people who you are. So many who want more money walk down the street and everyone they meet, they say, I don't have enough money. They'll look in a shop window and they'll complain that it costs too much. Or they will see someone who is spending money freely and they will criticize them as if there is something wrong.
You've got to stop feeling bad about money if you want more money to come. Is there anyone here who would like an improved physical condition? Then you've got to stop focusing upon the physical condition that is bothering you. You've got to stop saying, I don't feel good. You've got to stop beating the drum of what you do not want. And now, we're going to free you from all of that by explaining to you why you beat the drum of what you do not want. It's very simple. You know from the very core of your being that you're supposed to feel good. And when you don't feel good, you know something is really, really wrong. And then you set out to explain why you don't feel good. Because you know not feeling good, not feeling happy about money, not feeling good about your body, not feeling good about your relationship, not feeling good about your job, not feeling good about your work environment. You know that it is wrong. You know that you're supposed to feel good. And when you don't, you feel like you need to explain to someone why it is. So you keep explaining that if it were not for this, that you would feel better. Not realizing that if it were not for talking about if it were not for this, it would not be a vibrational player in your experience. Now, even though we know, and even though you know that we know, that talking about what is often doesn't serve you, especially if when you talk about what is, it doesn't feel good. We all know that you can't all of a sudden stop the patterns that you've developed. And we want to say to you, that's okay too. In other words, we see so often something isn't going the way you want it to go. And that makes you feel bad. And then you feel bad about feeling bad. And then you feel really bad about having felt so bad about feeling bad. And then you really feel bad about having felt bad. Because you know you're supposed to feel good. And then you talk to your friends about how bad you feel about not feeling better. So make a new decision today that you're going to make the best of wherever you are. And pat yourself on the back and say to yourself that the best that you can make of it is good enough and nobody else knows. What we mean by that is sometimes when you're in the depths of despair about something, anger is a relief. But somebody who has not been in the depths of despair and who is rarely angry, you know, one of those bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, annoying people, who sees you in your anger may very well say to you, your anger is misplaced, you should get over it. At which point, you'd like to punch their lights out. Because they don't know. No one can know that the anger that you're feeling right now was a big improvement over the despair that you were feeling before you chose the anger. Nobody knows that the anger that you're feeling, and maybe even displaying, is an improvement in your vibrational stance. That in order to stop beating the drum of despair, you chose the drum of anger, and it was a better drum. Now, we're not encouraging you to stay stuck in anger. We're encouraging you to take the bridge from depression that anger gives you, but then keep saying the same thing. I'm going to still keep trying to find a better feeling. I'm going to still try to make the best of this. You have come forth into a creative environment at a time when the energy is moving faster than we've ever seen it, anytime, any place, anywhere. You're a creative genius. You said, I want to be part of this fast-moving energy. I adore an environment where there is so much variety to choose from. And I will pay attention, you said, to the way I feel. And I will mold the energy. I will mold my thoughts. I will pick and choose by trial and error. I will feel my way into alignment with who I am. And after I am aligned, I will flow that energy toward what I choose. And Source will assist me in all ways. There is so much resource assisting you. You are very much not alone. You are the focal point of the energy that creates worlds. And all that energy and all that source adores you and will give you evidence in every moment of every day if you will allow it, to help you to know the perfection that we know you are. Jerry and Esther have recently been working on taking the Sarah book, and Jerry read it into a recorder many times, and then they edit it into the CDs and cassettes that they are making available to you. And someone had written them a letter knowing how much Esther likes the alignment of numbers. She sees it as evidence of her well-being. When she looks at the odometer and sees 11111, she loves that she has been inspired to look just at that moment. So they are listening to the recording, driving down the freeway. And Sarah has just awakened in the story. And she's looked at her digital clock, which reads 111. She doesn't know why she's awake, but she enjoys the coincidence of seeing 111, and she goes back to sleep. And in a few more moments, she wakes up and sees 222 on the clock. And then she goes back to sleep and wakes up again and sees 333 on the clock. Now this gets her attention. And as Jerry and Esther are listening to the recording, first time they are hearing it as they are driving the monster bus, they are at mile marker 333. And Esther says, I adore how the universe is able to orchestrate these things, to make the timing of our life so apparent to us. But there is an even stranger coincidence, as if there could be such a thing as a coincidence. So a woman wrote to them, I think it is lovely, she said, that the Sarah book ended on page 222. And Esther said to Jerry, I was not aware of that, were you? And then Jerry recorded for days the Sarah 3 book. And then Esther took all of the pieces of his recording and put them together, taking this best paragraph and this best paragraph, the best reading that she could find, and pieced it all together and made the chapters 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, in order to decide how much sound would go on each recording, she said, I'm going to make one long document, and then I will divide it into 3 or 4 pieces. And when she pieced all of the chapters together, the length of the recording across her sound machine said 222 minutes and 22.22 seconds. And Esther said, this is freaky. She doesn't mean freaky. She means this is spectacular. She means this is amazing. She means this defies logic. She means this is bigger than my mind can conceive. She means source energy is aware of us. She means source energy knows how much we like these things and guides us in increments, moment by moment, over weeks and weeks of a project in order to give us that moment of high at the end culmination that pleases us for no other reason than that it is pleasing to us slightly in the moment. Can you understand how much well-being is flowing to you? Do you understand how much orchestration is available to you? Do you understand how adored you are? Do you understand how the creation of this planet, the creation of this universe, do you understand how it all fits together for the perfection of your experience? Do you understand how beloved you are, how blessed you are, how adored you are, what an integral part of this creative process you are? We want you to. We want you to begin to understand the blessed nature of your being, and we want you to begin to look for the evidence of it, because we are showing it to you in every moment that you will allow yourselves to see it. Not just in lining up numbers, but in lining up lovers, in lining up money, in lining up fulfilling experiences, in lining up beautiful things for you to see, in lining up circumstances and events, in lining up amazing co-creative experiences where you are rendezvousing with one another for no other reason other than for the fantastically important reason of fulfilling you and satisfying you and pleasing you and giving you joy in the moment. Motion forward is inevitable. It must be. You cannot help but move forward. You are not here as the quest to move forward. You can't not move forward. You are here to experience outrageous joy. That is why you are here. Jerry and Esther have a dear friend. They've been friends with this man for years and years. And he says to them, there's nothing important going on here. And it's his way of saying,
No reason to get upset, no reason to worry, no reason to fret, no reason to fear. Nothing important going on, meaning there is no way that you can fail. There is nothing that can go wrong. The outcome of that which you are will continue to be extraordinarily wonderful. You think, oh, I could get sick, I could get run over by a truck, I could die. And we say, yes, many wonderful things like that could happen to you. Once you give up your fear of death and you accept your immortality, and you understand that you will never cease to be and that there will always be a powerful now, and the consciousness that is you will never end, and that it cannot turn out anything but wonderful, then maybe you will relax and say, there is nothing very important going on here. There is only an entire universe that has been established to point me toward a moment in time where I might experience some joy. That's what it is all about. And when you get joy-oriented, when joy becomes your quest, everything else falls into alignment. But just don't beat up on yourself if you are not right now, this red-hot minute, in outrageous joy. Hiya, folks. It is.
It's a thrill to have the opportunity to interact with you.
And you?
Thank you. We're a curious species, as
Good.
you know.
That's why we're here.
Yes. You've explained how delicious it can be for you to experience with us our joyful creations, our life-fulfilling moments, and on Earth as human beings. What I want to learn from you is about your experience with other species, perhaps on other planets. Could you describe perhaps one or two of these species or beings and describe your experiences with them?
We cannot do that for you in any sort of meaningful way, because the premise of your understanding is based upon what you've garnered here. The easiest way for you to get a sense of what that is like is to understand that joy is joy no matter what the point of attention. A feeling